Mike Chernoff said at the end of the 2025 season, the Guardians knew they needed to improve the offense in the outfield. Now Guardians fans are asking, is that still the plan?
Tanner Bobby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Cleveland Guardians fans? Welcome back. Hope you had a great holiday. We're excited to be back talking Guardians baseball with you for the next half hour, wherever you are. And Locked On Guardians, the only daily podcast that covers your team, the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. If you're new here, my name is Justin Lada. I'm one of your two co-hosts for the last 3 years and counting. My co-host and friend Jeff Ellis. I've spent 18 years covering the Guardians minor league system as a prospect writer and editor.
As you mentioned, I am Jeff Ellis. I've been here since Locked On expanded into baseball. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout 24/7, focused on prospects in the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today, every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And a big shout out to all of our everydayers out there joining us come rain or snow, which apparently there will be a lot of tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Ohio, it's 63 degrees. It didn't feel like that, but it was somewhat baseball weather. The problem is it's December 37th, and the Guardians' phones, I think, are turned off until the new year. So we'll have to dive into more of that on today's show. We will take a look around the rest of the American League to see where the Guardians stand before the new year. We're going to discuss multiple theories on why the Guardians have signed so many relievers. And first, we are asking, what is the Guardians' plan about their offense and the outfield, just like all of you? Today's episode of Locked On Guardians brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com, place your NFL live bets while the season is still going on. So we will get to Pedro Avila coming back home in the second segment, but I think it's important to start off with the big question is that the Guardians have cornered the market on non-roster invitee minor league relief deals. And, you know, Mike Chernoff did say at the end of the season, as I mentioned before, that the Guardians knew where they ranked an offense. They knew where their outfield was looking like. And they said, it's something we know we have to improve. The question is, they didn't really communicate how they expected to improve. They just said they know they needed to. And we always say, I think we're not the only ones who say this, but watch what they do, not listen to what they say. And so far, what they do is, well, as far as the offense, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's, and I know people want to jump and immediately get mad about that. And the things I will say, and you can call me an apologist, it's fine, is first off, the free agent market has been
clearing from the Dolans, just so you know.
I wish I was getting paid. But it's the same thing with everyone misreporting how much money they have. That's my favorite other thing that happens. But the free agent market has cleared out relievers first. Like that's what we've seen. And even starters and even like mediocre starters, we're seeing the high end guys weirdly in all the market aren't signing for the most part. There have been some big name signings, but we have like almost all the top starters are left and the top infielders, and the jewel of the market is still left. But the in between signings cleared out the relief market. It's cleared out really every starter who doesn't have a qualifying offer attached to them, I think, with any degree of certainty. And you and I didn't love this free agent market. There's still like Austin Hayes, we think would probably be an improvement. There's some other guys who would be helpful to this team, but I always thought that maybe this team was going to be more dependent on trades, using some of their depth to find a team that maybe needed pitching. And everything kind of is held up because there was an article, I can't remember if it was, I think it was at The Athletic, because that's mostly where I read, about how much money had been committed by this time a year ago and how much money has been committed so far. And there just hasn't been spending to the same degree. Now, again, a large part of that is $700 million to Soto a year ago. But I do feel like, before I'm willing to, and I'm always this way, people get very tired of it, but I'm always like, I got to wait till the end of the offseason to call them out. Like if we really enter next season with this grouping, I'm going to be miffed, but I still have faith that somewhere in January, they're going to pull off a trade or two, because we haven't had an offseason in a while where they haven't done something like that.
Yes, but we also haven't had an offseason where they've pulled off a trade for prospects for offense or anything on the major league roster of significance. I mean, the last time we had that again was Joey Wendell for Brandon Moss 10 years ago, Jeff. 10 years ago.
Didn't we
11
find some other minor trade that kind of was one of those? I thought we found something else.
Well, okay, that's minor. That's not, a big
swing. I remember who it was.
And I would kill for a Brandon Moss trade like right now. Maybe even the actual Brandon Moss himself, even though that was pretty disappointing. And I think it's also important to acknowledge this too. Like, I messaged the Insiders group last week when I found out that, I texted you, Rob Refsnyder decided to go to Seattle, not just because of the money, but because his family.
Yeah, he's a West Coast dude.
So it always takes two to tango, right? The free agent's got to be interested in coming here. It's not just about money all the time. And the same with trades. Other teams have to want your prospects. And some of this is the Guardians' fault too, as we said ad nauseum too. Some of it is how they value their own prospects. It's a little bit overvaluing. And the other part of it is they're hard to deal with. They set a firm value, and if you don't meet their value, they don't make the trade. They're very firm on that, which I understand to a degree, but if you have a combination of that plus not necessarily having the tools and the players in your system other teams covet, as we go back to the Sean Murphy and Matt Olson things, it makes it a lot harder to deal when you combine those two things. And I think it's also important to remember too that we all should have understood from the beginning that the majority of improvements were going to rely on internal development, right? They were never going to, and I said this is the same thing about the trade deadline last year. They were never going to acquire, this is 2024, they were never going to acquire somebody, an outfielder that had more upside than Chase DeLauder, right? Like you were never going to add an outfielder to the roster that was going to be better than the upside of Chase DeLauder. I'm not saying Chase DeLauder right now. I'm saying his upside. I said the same thing about Gavin Williams in 2024. And, who did they acquire? They acquired, they signed Matt Boyd and they acquired Alex Cobb. They did not acquire anybody that had more upside than Gavin Williams. But the analogy I was coming up with when I was thinking about this, you can't have like 3 deflated tires in your car and only decide to put an air in 1 or 2. You know what I mean? Like it's still not going to run properly. You're still going to run it down. And I hate the idea of how they try to thread the needle of saying, well, we don't want to block our young players, but we also want the players to knock the door down, right? Like they always say both those things. It's got to be one or the other. It really can't be both. And I know like your theory is guys don't get blocked, and I agree with that. But I still think it's a poor practice to say like, all right, Chase DeLauder, okay, George Valera, CJ Kafis, whoever, you are going to be the guys that step up this year and carry the offense behind Jose Ramirez and Steven Kwan and Kyle Manzardo. Like you are the guys we're expecting big growth from. That can't be their only plan. I imagine that probably is plan B, but like you can't just go into the season saying, all right, you're it, and not get them any help. Like you don't want to, I think they're smart enough to realize they can't rely on all these rookies with injury problems and stuff like that. Like they have to give those guys support too. And that's where an Austin Hayes or a Rob Refsnyder or a Dane Myers would have come in handy.
Yeah. And, looking at those guys, I think, you and I were talking off air. We don't have a ton of time now. Dane Myers would have been, last week I said there was not a right-handed hitting center fielder that they could get in a platoon. And then Dane Myers got traded. And the thing with all of those guys is they're flawed, but they would help you out in roughly 20 to 25% of your games because they hit lefties well. With this team and where they are, I'm just very curious to see, again, can they move the needle? For those at home who might be shouting, the 2 minor offseason trades where they got a veteran were Luplow and Santana. Those were the other 2 we talked about the previous time.
Luplow was a good addition. I'll give him that. I enjoyed Jordan Luplow when he was here. And then they brought Carlos Santana back from Seattle.
It was Santa, and then they got rid of Edwin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It was Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah. Philadelphia earlier in the offseason doesn't trade him to Seattle. Seattle traded us to us.
Yeah, he never played for Seattle at that
point.
And
then we got Jake Bowers as well and got rid of Yandy.
Okay, well, the last time they did this then
it didn't go well.
Wasn't good. Yeah, no. I don't know if a name like that's gonna change hands for them this offseason, but it is only December 29th. There's time. It just hasn't happened, and I'm gonna doubt them until they do it. I got to be honest, just because of the history. And again, it's about what they do, not what they say.
Whereas I'm going, it's a long off season. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt until we get to February.
Yeah, we'll get there soon enough. It is almost a new year. Just a minute, we're going to be answering some other questions everyone has. Is why do the Guardians keep adding so many relievers? Next. Basketball season, it is getting a little bit crazy. And Fridays, they feel a little bit different during basketball season. FanDuel is making them even better for you. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel is giving a new way for customers to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. So NBA Happy Hour, what it is your official pregame. It's a limited time window where your special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. So these can range 6 to 7:30 Eastern. These are appointment viewing NBA games. They're NBA Happy Hour. All you got to do is open the app during Happy Hour. It always brings something new. They've got boosts. They've got bonuses. They've got all kinds of surprises. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without having to overthink it. Right now, the Cavs, I don't know what they're playing Friday, but they are playing tonight, and they're getting 4.5 from San Antonio. They need to get back on the right foot real fast, or it's going to get ugly here real quick. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app, see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. A little basketball, a little bit of action, a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We, of course, appreciate all of you making Locked On Guardians part of your daily routine, being here with us as your first listen today and everywhere you get podcasts. And you already are living with the Guardians every single day, whether they do something or not. I know that we're here with you 5 days a week or 3 days a week at this point in the off season. Take it up a level. Go ad free. Join the Everydayer Club today. Get Locked On Guardians now with no interruptions and members only Discord access and more for $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonguardians.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn a little bit more. So Pedro Avila is back, Jeff. Back like he never left. He's back on a split contract. Now we've got a lot of questions about people like, what is a split contract? Essentially, a split contract is you guarantee the player so much money if he's on the 40-man roster or on the 26-man roster, and then if he's in AAA, he gets I believe it's 60%, I believe is what it is. It's a prorated portion of what he would get in the majors and the minors. So it gives him a little bit of a pay bump over the league minimum, essentially, or whatever it is in AAA. So Avila comes back for that. As of right now, Guardians haven't confirmed the signing yet, by the way, but we don't know whether or not he's going to take up a 40-man roster spot. I'd be very surprised if he does. I don't think he has the demand to do it, but I'm pretty
with the two-way, I don't think it can be. I think a two-way just guarantees.
Well, they can be on the 40 with the two-way. They can.
They can, but typically if someone's signing a two-way contract now, it means they're not a 40-man. Typically
they're not. Yes. So I know a lot of people also said, like, why did they let Pedro Avila walk? Well, Pedro Avila wanted a guaranteed contract last year, and I think he also wanted to be a starter. And that's what he went over to Japan to do.
Yeah, and he was a pretty decent starter. He was on a terrible team. Let's just be honest with that. He was on one of the worst teams in the league. And to give you an idea of how good Japan is, the most effective power hitter in one of the leagues, I believe in the Pacific League last year, was Franmil Reyes. So he led the league in home runs and RBIs and OPS. The other player, I'm not going to risk butchering his name, is someone who will be one of the top international free agents next year. It's like T first name, I believe, and an S last name, and I'm not going to butcher it right now. But he's what Murakami people think Murakami is. He actually is. But he's for next year. But the other one is Franmil Reyes. What?
It's not Okamoto?
No, it's like no, it's not Okamoto. It's someone who's not posted yet. It's like Tot. I was diving deep. He's going to leave after next year. So next year he'll be eligible.
Gotcha.
I think he plays for the Tigers over there. But when you look at Avila with his numbers, a little bit concerning. He didn't miss that many bats, but we will again say in Japan, strikeout rates are lower in general. His ERA and his FIP were very different, a 309 FIP. And he started, I lost there. He started 15 games.
15. Okay.
I'm sorry, 14 games started, 1 game out of the pen. That's with their major league team. He had a few games kind of at like their minor league equivalent. He had some life stuff. He became a first-time father in August, which I think is part of the reason he definitely wanted to come back. Had a pair of twins, it looks like, doing some Instagram looking for. When I typed his name, it was the first thing that popped up. It wasn't like I want to make it sound like I'm Instagram stalking here, but it's like, oh, hey, I looked at Pedro Avila and it was there. So, he had reasons to want to come back. But if I was to, flip this inside out and it had tinfoil in it, the tinfoil hat time would be, this gives them starting pitching depth. They have the 6 starters right now. There were the 6 starters in September. It's hard to do that over the course of a full season. If they were going to consider trading them and were afraid of losing some starting pitching depth, Peterson hasn't pitched at the big league level, and Ninkasi is more of an up and down guy. This gives them someone who spent all last year pitching in a solid league, who has pitched at the big league level, who, if you're looking for someone to be a 6 starter, maybe you feel a little more confident trading one of those other guys. So it might not mean any of that. It just might mean that they need some depth. But, I think it's a good depth add. He was well liked in his time here. Seems like a good guy. Gets to come back. I'm sure he wishes he had an even better season with some of the money guys are getting coming back from Japan and Korea. But he had a solid season for a pretty terrible team.
Yeah. The other only thing I can think of, too, with this is that it could be guys that are pitching in the World Baseball Classic. Like they're trying to add guys that can be in camp with them that aren't necessarily committed to playing. I don't know who all is committed to WBC among pitchers. We thought Cade Smith and Eric Sabrowski were, but looks like Cade Smith is not pitching for Team Canada, so that's a good thing for Cleveland at this point. And it's probably smart for him, given that he doesn't have a guaranteed contract in terms of long term. But I don't know who else. There might be other guys that would be on their like non-roster invitees or just camp depth, guys that would be coming to camp that would be logging innings for them. Like, I don't know, I'm trying to look at the roster here and see what guys could pitch where. I don't know. There could be a number of pitchers in the minors that might be playing for, another country that could be out of camp that they replace the innings with. Because I think people underestimate how many innings you really need to have in camp covered, especially when camp starts a little bit earlier because of the World Baseball Classic. So it's a longer camp this year. I get all the non-roster invitee guys aren't going because they're trying to win jobs with their club. But also, at some point during camp, like, there's going to be a lot of guys who get cut too, by the way. Like, do you see Tanner Burns and Jack Leftwich and Davis Sharp surviving spring training? Like, I think there's a good chance when they go into the regular season that those guys are gone. So you're going to need arms at AAA. Well,
it's like they don't do a lot of camp cuts, do they? Like, I feel like they're probably going to run with a lot.
They always shave down the number. Like, so there's a lot of guys that get released at the end of spring training to clear room. So, like, those are guys. I mean, and plus, look, you have Aleman, you have Holderman, you have Carlos Hernandez, Cody Hoyer, you're adding Avila. Like, you have Justin Brule, if we still haven't heard if he's going to clear waivers yet. Like, same with Noel, which is strange at this point. But
it's because of the freeze. Like, his freeze through the holidays is why. Like, even if someone claimed Noel, we wouldn't know yet, just because of the holiday freeze on transactions. Guys can be. I think it would.
Is that a real thing? I saw someone saying in baseball. No, because there was Tyler Soderstrom got a contract extension on Christmas.
Well, he can get a contract, but it's like there's a waiver freeze. I read a whole thing on it with either the Athletic or MLB trade rumors. So it's like it happened a year ago as well, that like these guys on waivers can sit on waivers for a while. Like, that's, not out of the ordinary at this time of year to see that happen. It's same thing like the Dane. Yeah, the Dane, the trade that just happened, like that could happen. But like essentially with Noel, I think it's not till January will they find out more on him. But yeah, for just guys who are in the waiver system, they're kind of stuck for like 2 weeks right now, just kind of waiting.
Yeah.
But teams will alert their guy. So that, if something happened, like Noel knows, but we won't find out.
Yeah. So I could see a number of these arms. Like, what are you going to do with Burns and Leftwich and like those guys at this point? Like, what they don't, those guys might want other opportunities anyway. And they don't serve much of a purpose for Cleveland at this point because they've been, as I was pretty high on Jack Leftwich at one point, it's not happening,
You always need depth, right? Like, it just comes down to how much depth do they need. And
and somebody in spring training always gets Tommy John, or somebody, Trevor Stephan had his Tommy John at last spring training or 2 spring trainings ago. Like, there's always someone that goes down in spring training, especially that first week. It's a longer camp this year. So that's why they're signing so many relievers. As long as they keep adding non-roster invitees to that, I don't care. If they sign another major league reliever, which I'd be surprised by, like Hunter Harvey went to the Royals. Cubs. I think we kind of knew they'd be out on him after they signed Sean Armstrong. But that's fine. Like they added Sean Armstrong. That's what we wanted them to do. So I think they're pretty much out on any major league relievers at this point because they should be holding on for, some kind of offensive addition, whatever that looks like. All right. So we know that the other teams in the American League or the American League Central have been active, minus one team who's been a little less active than the Guardians. Talk about where the Guardians stand in the American League Central halfway through the MLB offseason next. Make sure you're keeping up to date with all things Guardians this offseason, whatever they do, even what they're not doing. We're talking about what they're not doing today, too. You can hit the bell on YouTube to get notified of the newest episode of the show. Especially important when we're, only doing 3 days a week or 2 days a week during the holiday week. And as we ramp back up to 5 in spring training, you can auto download wherever you get your audio podcasts. We are free everywhere. You keep the show in your feed no matter what's going on, even during the holiday season. We are right here with you. So let's talk about the state of the AL Central real quick, because we've talked about how the Guardians haven't been active on the offensive side of transactions. They've certainly added a lot of pitching. It hasn't been the most exciting offseason across the American League Central, which to me is not really a surprise because everybody in the American League Central is losing TV money. If we're being honest, like the Twins are in the same shape. They're trying to shave payroll. The White Sox are goofy and terrible. The Royals, I don't know what their TV situation is, but it can't be better than the Guardians. And then the Tigers, they kind of are where they are. I haven't seen any team in the Central this offseason really have oh, wow, that's going to change the division a little bit, or that's going to make things harder. The Tigers added some relief depth, right? They signed Kelly Jansen. They brought back Kyle Finnegan. They did sign Drew Anderson back from the KBO. Honestly, to me, the biggest addition that the Tigers are going to have in 2026 is Kevin McGonigal probably starts the year in the majors. So, that's going to be the biggest swing for them. The Royals have been pretty active, right? They've got Isaac Collins coming from the Brewers. If he can keep up on what he did a year ago. Matt Strom, they traded for to bring him back for a year. They did sign Lane Thomas, which I know Jeff wants to talk about. And the White Sox signed, Munenori Murakami, who could have the highest upside, but he has the biggest bust potential too. They added Anthony Kay, which is smart. And then the Twins, I think all they've done is Josh Bell. That's it.
I believe that's it for them. I'll double check. Very quickly, the Royals are with the Bally, Diamond, whatever street sports they are now. So they're in that same mess of a situation. Yeah. So everyone's kind of hurting. The Twins did trade for Alex Jackson, the backup catcher, if you want to count that for Peyton Eels. And then they got, that's about it. They added Dan Altavilla to a minor league contract. So they're not so much. But so we agree, if everything works out, which is very unlikely to, Murakami's ceiling is the highest. But if you're looking at what is the biggest potential gap for improvement, in my opinion, it's Lane Thomas. And the reason I say that is because the Royals outfield was the worst in baseball a year ago. As much as we complain in Cleveland, the Royals were statistically the worst at, I believe, everything. So when you look at how bad the Royals were, if Lane Thomas produces this year that Justin thought he was going to do last year, if he is an all-star for them, that's the gap from what they had a year ago in any of those outfield spots to him is so big. That's the biggest room for improvement. The Royals have been pretty busy, but no one's really blown the doors off right now. There has not been that deal that really makes you sit up and go, huh, I will lean a little bit more towards the Royals as currently the winner in the division. I do like Nick Mears is kind of more of a Rugi. They added him. Matt Strom has been really good for a lot of years now. It's a 1-year situation. Isaac Collins is of that the Alex Call, Brendan Donovan, Stephen Kwan, TJ Friedel skill set. And the reason he's successful is with line drives, but a high BABIP, so we're probably looking at regression. Talked about Lane Thomas, giving Mikhail Garcia, who I like a lot, that contract. Unfortunate for them, and Carter Jensen will get more time in the big leagues this year for them, and that could be a fun thing. So they got some prospect stuff. But for the Tigers, it really does come down to like I'll say this. You and I were higher before this offseason even began on Sean Armstrong than anyone the Tigers added on, on bringing back in Finnegan or adding Jansen. So it's like those moves aren't that exciting. If they do get McGonigal to start the year, that would be huge for them. Matt Clark is getting close. They have some really fun prospects getting close, but they're just they are in a high pressure situation because if things go south,
they need to win.
Yeah, it's like if things go south, then all of a sudden your ace is going to get traded. So they're in a very weird situation to walk into. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I think Detroit's still probably the most talented team in the division. Kansas City, I think, has had the best offseason, though no one's had better in the C. And well, again, it's a long offseason. I'm very curious to see what happens for a lot of these teams once the trade market starts to open up a little bit more. It's been a dead trade market for the most part. I mean, you get the Dane Meyer deals here and there, but it's not been too many outside of Boston and the Cardinals. I feel like we're just not seeing too much out there.
Yeah, those are the only two that are really playing together, right? Like those are the only guys that are making trades, unless you count the Rays and was it Diamondbacks that traded, or who did the Rays trade with?
Baltimore for the Shane Baz deal.
Yeah, that's right.
They did that other deal with the Pirates and the Astros. I mean, listen, I'm still all about trading for Jesus Sanchez and trading a starter to Houston. Houston still needs starters, even after getting Mike Burrows, who's had some health issues. But like Tampa has made some trades. But yeah, it's in Pittsburgh. Yeah, and Pittsburgh made that other trade with Boston. Boston's been the most trade active team so far. Three trades.
They have been. Yeah, I don't think Boston's signed a major league free agent yet, have they?
I don't believe so. I could be wrong in that.
I've seen a lot of their fans and reporters talk about
that. For me, it was just kind of funny because even Oviedo, who they got from Pittsburgh, didn't he start with the Cardinals? So everyone they've gotten is a former Cardinals player, right?
Yeah. The Red Sox this offseason trade.
Yeah, I missed Justin Reimer for Ryan Watson. I forgot about the Jake Bennett for Luis Perales deal with the Nationals.
There's been
Isaiah Jackson for Von Grissom. They have been super trade active, but
there's been no major league free agents signed by now. I haven't seen a minor league free agent either. But I'm sorry, minor league contract to Alec Gamboa, who's 29. That's been their only free agent acquisition. So that's the point. Like, free agency is not the only way to add. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, sign free agents, do this, do that. I mean, yes, Rob Refsnyder was a guy we thought made sense, and Austin Hayes could help improve this roster, at least give you some protection and give you some depth, and not force your prospects to play 140 games and hope to God they all pan out and stay healthy at the same time. But trades are important too. And off air we were talking about like the Reds. Like the Reds have had a very bad offseason in terms of optics. And I, to be clear, I don't care about optics, by the way. Like I know a number of people saying like, oh, well, it's bad luck that the Pirates are spending and the White Sox are spending and Cleveland's doing nothing. I don't care what those teams do. The Pirates have been terrible since they haven't made the playoffs in 10 years. I think that was the largest contract they've given out in terms of yearly average contract when they gave over the money he did. It was their first multi-year contract since 2009. They had not signed a free agent for over 2 years. Since 2009, and the White Sox, they've been terrible. 2009, that would be like 16 years. It was Ivan Nova. But they haven't made the playoffs since 2015, 2014. I can't remember the last time they made the playoffs. And the White Sox, we know they've been terrible for forever, and they're a mess. So I don't care about the optics. I just care about Cleveland finding ways to improve. And the Reds, like the JJ Bleday signing, I kind of lost faith in him, and they traded for Dane Myers, who you and I, were like, oh yeah, that would have made sense for Cleveland, right? Because it would have been a cheap upgrade, and the prospect they gave up was not anything big. He's a great defender with a strong arm who can hit lefties. He's better than Angel in that role. And that's what they needed. And it's like this team, if they were always going to rely on, which we knew, if they were always going to hope that they have their hopes hinge on DeLauder, Valera, Kefis, whoever come through and support Jose and Quan and Manzardo, you need to add around the fringes. You need to win on the fringes. That's where Cleveland lives. So a Dane Myers makes sense. A Rob Refsnyder makes sense. A Austin Hayes could make some sense. I don't know any other names off the top of my head I can think of. Jesus Sanchez can make some sense. Like, those are the things Cleveland needs to be doing, and they haven't done them yet. And let's hope they do. But that's like the Reds. Like, no one's going to be, writing headlines about, JJ Bleday and Dane Myers. No, those aren't sexy headlines. But you want to know what? That's depth. That's improving the fringes of your roster. And at the end of the day, that could wind up helping you, with 2 or 3 to 4 wins. And that could be the difference between a wild card spot and going home in October or a division.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, they got to add more. I'll say, like, the metrics on a platoon bat is that it's probably a 1 to 2 win thing, which is, as we saw this past year, the difference of winning the division or not. So they do need to improve, just because. And a very bottom line thing, I would love to see Valera and Lada play 100 games, but the next time I see either of those guys play 100 games is going to be about the first time I've seen either play 100 games in a year. Like, you also can't bet on, and I've had people be like, you need to stop talking about the injuries. I'm like, no, because that's always going to be present until they show it's not a concern. Like, right. I can't count on those guys. And, I know that's why they signed Nolan Jones. I know people hate that. And it was because they needed a depth guy, but like, I still think they only think of him as a depth guy. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I'm like, I don't understand why they think he's more than that. But, for now, like, I am very curious to see. We have another month where this goes for them. Like, I still am, maybe I'm being naive, but I foolishly believe that there is, good things on the horizon.
Yeah, we'll find out. I mean, like I said, trades haven't really happened yet. The trade market's really stalled. That probably continues until we see, like, Framber Valdez is still out there, and Cody Bellinger's still out there, and
Bichette and Bregman and Tucker and Ranger Suarez and like everyone.
Yeah, there are still big names on the market, and I do think that is going to hold the trade market up. So, January, it could be a very busy month. We could see free agency and trades be the big story in January. I mean, baseball, really, they need to figure out how to make their offseason more exciting. Like, the fact that you have arguably Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez are the best 2 free agents on the market this offseason, and neither of them have a contract yet. If this was the NBA or the NFL, they'd have been gone months ago. And
day one,
it's like, those are your headlines. And right now we're still sitting here, and that's blocking other people from making moves. So baseball, when they go to the lockout next year, they better be working on.
Well, I mean, that's
fix this.
What happens with a cap. People have to have so much they can allocate, and they know what it is.
It is.
Until you get a cap, that's never going to change.
Appreciate y'all being here. Hope you enjoyed your holiday. We're glad to be back talking Guardians baseball with you. Tune in. I'll be back on Wednesday with you. We're going to talk about roster projection 2.0. So we'll talk about who will be on, I think, the opening day roster. We'll also probably have a chance to look at what will happen with Noel and Brule if that doesn't happen yet. And then we'll go over any other news that happens in the meantime. Make sure you're following and subscribing Locked On Guardians to get all the latest news. And I believe there is still time if you want to get a free month of the Everydayer Club here on social media. If Locked On Guardians made your Spotify Wrap of the Year, tag the National Locked On Podcast Network, any account on any social media platform, they'll drop you a code. You can be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club, get Locked On Guardians ad-free, and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channels. There's still time to do that before the end of the week.
Yep. Thank you all. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It helps. I won't see you until next year, so have a great rest of your year. Thank you all, and go Guardians, go.